This is the Convene Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Convene Talk, where we discuss interesting stories that appear in our popular newsletter, News Junkie. My name is Magdalina Atanassova, or Maggie, like I said last time, digital media editor of Convene. Again, this time we're not picking a story from News Junkie. We are continuing the conversation on the membership model for association, and if that's still relevant, that we kind of ended on with our last conversation. We raised the question if associations are more trusted than media and the government. We also mentioned the role of PCOs, or professional congress organizers, and association management companies, helping association clients navigate this topic and the importance of members for associations in order for them to convene. So these were some of the open questions we kind of threw out there, but we knew we didn't have time to discuss them. So over to all of you, really. What do you think? Where are we starting?
Curt, your stories were really interesting that you did on the medical event in Europe. I can't remember the name of it, but the takeaway I got from that was that younger generation, younger professionals found it really valuable to be part of the association, but they wanted to be a part of that community on their own terms. I'm kind of thinking this is not, for me, it's not even generational. They didn't like all of the bureaucratic stuff that comes with membership, but they liked access to the community and being part of that community. So I wonder if anybody else had the same thoughts from that.
I was actually thinking about the community. And isn't this the easiest part to replicate outside an association right now? Because there are so many other communities that naturally form, especially now with social media. It's easier than before to build your own circle and to meet with those people and have a conversation, closed conversation in, say, through WhatsApp or through a social media channel, and have this conversation very relevant to what you want to achieve. And I believe we observed that during the pandemic, when medical professionals were trying to figure out the vaccine, they could not meet in person for the very first time in a very long time. But there was this international collaboration that was happening through specific channels to them, so to these medical professionals. So they found their own ways to communicate, share research in a quick manner because everybody was working towards a solution. And I found that fascinating how, people did rely on their circles and their own communities. So they did not really need the association to be their middleman in this case. And I think that also facilitated finding the solution so quickly in those tough times. I would say, I don't know. I don't know if community is the key here. Barbara, what do you think?
I agree totally. That was fascinating to see. I feel like Twitter was really very key in connecting epidemiologists who were working on the vaccine. And I've just seen other communities develop who are interested. I know there's like a community around the work that Megan Henshaw did with Google's belonging and just their project to take the time when they weren't meeting to just figure out what people needed. When I think about those communities, I think about their lifespan, like whether those epidemiologists that got together, if they're still getting as much input from new sources. Like I feel like that's one of the values of associations is the intentional curation of the community and to bring in different voices. There's no question that associations are in a period of reforming and redefinition. And I find it that Freeman research about associations being the number one place where people trust is kind of, here's what's the value, is to be connected to people that are facing this very same problems that you're facing. So I feel as much as associations can understand what their changing nature of their value to their members, that's all to the good.
This is Casey Gale, managing editor. And kind of bouncing off what you said, Maggie, I definitely think a lot of younger people feel as though they can find the same types of communities just online on their own. And Michelle shared a story with us that's from a couple years ago from Sidecar, but it's still really relevant today. They were saying that the average age of members in associations continues to increase because younger people are utilizing those online resources more. And so they really need to find ways to attract younger members. And the value I see in associations is that there's a certain structure to them that online communities really can't provide. And this article even mentions that the internet has very limited quality control factors in terms of misinformation. And I think also in terms of things like accountability. Belonging to an association comes with a certain responsibility, perhaps because you paid for a membership and now you want to continue participating and get your money's worth out of it. Whereas I think small groups of maybe just friends or colleagues won't have that same accountability and connectivity because you can just opt out at any time. You can get with a group of friends or professionals and talk about books in a WhatsApp chat or something. But if you belong to a book club, you might actually make sure you read the book, you'll attend the meeting. So I think having just that structure is really valuable. And I think something that, young people also need. Curt's story had a lot about mentorship and how that association provided a lot of mentorship for these younger professionals. And I think that would be harder to find in a less structured setting.
This is Jen Dienst, senior editor. I just wanted to build on what Casey said. She brings up a really good point. And it reminded me of a story I did kind of during the heart of the pandemic. I believe it was in 2021. And I interviewed two experts who their expertise is within community building within the association space. And I interviewed them about how a lot of associations at the time, I believe, yes, it was 2021, were really struggling with engagement and kind of keeping their members involved. And one of the kind of pain points that they identified was that they're kind of lacking online community. And it's something that it was actually touched on in a study at the time by Event MB Studio, part of Skift. And it said that, 63% of event professionals said that they see their events becoming hybrid in the future. And by far, the most positive result of hosting virtual events is the increased reach, with 36% of event planners citing this advantage. This is up from 34% last year, and it echoes a wider sentiment in the industry about the value virtual provides by reducing barriers to entry and attracting a truly global pool of attendees. Well, we remember at the time that was basically the only events that were being hosted. And the flip side of that was that 1/3 said engagement was their biggest challenge in hosting virtual events, and a solution may be found in developing online communities. So I just thought that was really interesting. That was a pain. Kiki Italian. Kiki, if you're listening, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. I believe that's how you pronounce your name. She, at the time, was CEO and host of an online community blog and podcast association chat. And she said that these associations at the time were scrambling when the pandemic hit. And it's because they didn't have, that built-in online community. And they were kind of scrambling to figure out how they could build that and how important that was. So I'd be so curious to check in with them now and see how that's changed and kind of evolved since then. But yeah, Curt, what do you think?
This is Curt Wagner, the digital editor. And going along with the building the communities, when I did my story, I was talking to the associations director, I think, for Keenest Group's association management division, if that's what you call it. And she was telling me that Kina's group, because a lot of their clients are associations, and this is an issue that has been around for a little bit about the aging of the association membership, that they've actually created initiatives to promote intergenerational collaboration, and that they can share with their clients and implement, with their clients and everything. And part of that is organizing year-round community type of things, like professional development workshops or sessions, also just, groups that facilitate conversation and things like that, and provide opportunities for them to connect and contribute year round. And also the other things that they're trying to do is to give the younger generation sort of some responsibility. Like one thing they did at this medical meeting for the Association for European Pediatric and Congenital Cardiology was one of the sessions was completely created and organized and run by this group of younger doctors. So that was their session. And then they had also the get-togethers with the mentors and things like that. But she told a story up to me about how a couple of years ago, some association decided, we want to engage with younger members, so we'll let one of our younger members on one of our boards. But that person had no sort of power, not necessarily power, but they had no voting right, or it was just sort of like, you can sit here and listen to us and be good. And she talked about how that's just not going to cut it these days, because they want everything to work the way they want. They want things on their own terms, as you said, Michelle. But it's all, I think all those things, and it's not just necessarily generational, right? You belong to something that you feel like they want you to belong to. They want you there, right? So you have to sort of feel wanted and part of the community and all that kind of stuff. And I think also they need to just sort of advertise more, or get the word out that they're a place for professionals in that industry to go to, and what you'll get from it and everything. That's my connection to the story, I guess. And Barbara, you had something to say.
Yeah, thank you. This is Barbara Palmer, a deputy editor. I'm thinking about two things. I'm thinking about the advocacy element of associations, how particularly in the landscape we're in, I think association members look to their leaders to help them make decisions about, ethical concerns. And I know that associations do lobby Congress, and they can really advocate for change in areas like, reproductive health care. But the other thing I'm thinking about is Substack. I don't know if anyone else here has joined a community on Substack. They're so alluring because I am a member of this community. An artist named Wendy McNaughton did these daily drawings during the pandemic, and that is now transferred to something called the Grown Up Table, and she invites artists and does weekly challenges. And I would say that my participation in this, I pay a monthly fee to be part of this, and my participation is so low. It's like maybe 10%, if that. And I think it's because there's not that. There's some in-person meetings here in the Bay Area, but I haven't really participated. So I just think it's very interesting. I'm in a couple other Substack communities, and it's just a very interesting way that they're able to really zero in on your interests and connect you with people with that very niche interest. And I don't know if anyone else I saw some heads nodding when I mentioned Substack. Do you think that has anything to do with associations, the Substack communities?
I think so, especially when you mention the payment part, the fee that you pay to be a part of that community. Because I believe that's the pain point of associations nowadays, right? Connecting to this newer generation, they have to communicate well what's the value. You're paying this fee. And I know a lot of associations currently have these models where students and young professionals can join for free for a while until they become a legitimate part of the industry, let's say, so they can pay back. But I think that's the same with Substack, right? You pay, but it's up to you to participate. And I feel it's the same with associations. You pay a fee, but it's up to you to engage with that association, to really dig into what they have to offer. How can you become a valuable part of that community and give back yourself, or learn, or use that, use these resources to grow your own career and your own network? But it's up to you. And with associations, there are tiny associations on very niche topics. And also there are, interestingly enough, events. So there are no associations to back them up, but there are events that form around niche topics just to build that community first and potentially then grow into an association. So the other way around as well. But it's up to the individual. And I'm curious if Casey had something similar in mind.
Thanks, Maggie. Well, related to the Substack conversation, I don't belong to any of those, but I do subscribe to a Patreon, which is a similar thing. It's a subscription service of a content creator I like who does content related to books and movies and things like that. And you pay, $5 a month, and you get to have access to additional content and some community-based activities. And I participate in it a lot because I really enjoy that community. But just like Maggie said, it's really kind of what you make of any small community. It's up to you how active you want to be. But just relating back to what Curt was saying before, appealing to different generations, I don't think the interest in autonomy within an association is related to one specific generation. But I do think it's important for associations themselves to employ people of all different generations to see what does appeal to them. I know in one of the stories Curt wrote, it talked about different ways that you can appeal to younger folks. And one of the suggestions was to, advertise on places like Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram. And that's a great idea. But I think it's important for things that are targeted toward a certain age group to be made by that age group, or at least, consulted on a little bit from that age group, so that it's not like these older people, older professionals, kind of talking down or trying to get on the same level as younger people and not really understanding what connects with them the best.
Or somebody telling dad jokes.
Right. I mean, I would join if there were dad jokes, but that might not work on everybody.
Yeah, right.
I believe there's one more pro associations that is not maybe very often very well communicated, and that's the volunteering part. So trying to grow your career while volunteering in an association, it really helps you grow your career faster in certain areas. Of course, it would be specific to the industry or interests, but I see that oftentimes it really helps because it puts your name out there, so people get to know you and get to be a bit more aware of who you are as a professional, and this can open doors in the future that you might not have foreseen in the beginning. But just giving yourself into that process and just trusting that, the structures of the association would get you to a new place, I think it's very valuable. But again, how is this communicated? And I feel that because people that lead associations have been engaged with them for many years, they just become blind to that as a plus. And they assume the others know, but it's not necessarily the case. Same with the 360 engagements that many events really love to talk about. And I believe personally it's not realistic because I cannot engage 360 with anything, really, no matter what it is. It's not feasible, no matter how much I love an association, no matter how much I love a movie or anything else that I really want to engage with. It's just not realistic. It takes too much bandwidth, and you also have other priorities in your life. So I just would like to put it out there and say, stop aiming for 360 engagement. Don't waste your resources there. There are better ways. Michelle, what do you think?
I think it's more of an aspiration than it is a reality. So, and I think it's part of the whole evolution. When I first started in, learning about the events industry more than 2 decades ago, I would say associations, their only engagement was the annual meeting. And people became members because they got a significant reduced rate to attend the annual meeting, and they really didn't use that membership for anything else. But there wasn't a lot offered to them except if they happened to, and I'm just using PCMA as an example, if they happened to live in a city where there was a very active chapter, then they could attend chapter events or they had their local community. But people who live outside of a chapter, less opportunity for engagement, except maybe webinars or other kinds of online opportunities. But I have seen a shift where they talked about, oh, you need to have this engagement year round. I don't think they expect people to tune in every day, but I think the aspiration is to have resources available every day for people to avail themselves of them, not necessarily the expectation is that, oh, you're going to tune in every day and actively participate, just that it will be available. So there's a year-round engagement opportunity rather than just that one-off annual meeting. That's my 2 cents from what I've seen happen in the industry. I do think we've evolved, but I think that it is very much a challenge to get out of that mindset of like we exist to have the annual meeting and all of the resources are devoted to that. I just see that with associations. It just takes so much to have the event itself that the other stuff becomes kind of ancillary to that.
Yeah, I feel like when there is an association management company or a stable body behind an association to support it, things evolve a bit better. Because when you just rely on a board, which is not a permanent body, just changes so often, it's very hard to keep evolving. You need something stable, a pillar that would just guide you and help you move forward. And it's great that associations rely on so much voluntary work, but there needs to be a bit extra there. Like PCMA, I think it's a good example. There's permanent staff working at PCMA. It's not only the board doing the hard work of moving the whole association forward, just as an example.
Yeah, and I think for when we talk to people at Convening Leaders, it's the Hospitality Helping Hands initiative that people really feel like they roll up their sleeves, they're doing something to give back to the community, but that is also where they foster relationships and they cultivate relationships and they get to know people. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think actually, Barbara, you've written about that, how doing something together is much more meaningful for people. And that's where you get those bonds rather than just, showing up in an event and sitting next to somebody in an audience, in a ballroom.
Yeah. Like it's like if you're just looking at each other, that, it's harder to just build a natural connection. But when you're side by side looking towards something else, it's much easier. It kind of takes off that pressure. I'm just thinking about like if there's an association that has like-minded people that are solving the problems that you have and offering you access to new ways of doing things, like that's the central thing. I'm just thinking about an association that someone I knew was part of. Their idea of a hospitality suite was, or like any kind of hospitality, was like somebody's room with a bathtub full of beer, but they would never miss that meeting because that was where they linked up with people that were really at the forefront of that industry and volunteered for things and were happy to be asked to do things. So I think just finding that, putting your attention on what the value for the members are rather than looking so much at the existing structure and keep building that out, I think is really key to the association's success and sustainability. What are you thinking, Michelle?
I'm just going to piggyback on that because I did read an article on LinkedIn, which is about the Social Purpose Association, which is not only helping people belong to something that helps them in their careers, but feeling like they belong to an association that contributes to the greater good. And the person who wrote this article talked about that. What's the greater role the association plays in the region, the country, or the world? What is the societal or humanitarian benefit? So I think that would be the thing that connects to younger people, because we've read all of these surveys where people are looking for work that is meaningful to them, that they feel like they're doing something good in the world, they're making a positive contribution. So I think this is a role that associations can play with the younger generation, is if they feel like they are part of something that is contributing to the greater good. That would be something that would, I think, encourage them to feel like it's worth their time and effort and money investment to join.
I think that's a fantastic point.
A fantastic point to close on. It's a rich topic, but also a difficult topic to discuss. And we will certainly write more on it. And as usual, there will be links in the show notes. And for all our listeners, don't forget to support us by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. And until next time.